Hi. So I kind of wanted to talk about synthesis because from talking to some people on Discord, sometimes I share things that people haven't heard yet. So I'm just going to share this topic. It would mainly be about frequency interaction and using synthesizers differently. Really, at the end of the day, a synthesizer is just a tool, and there's no set way to do this except for these sometimes suggested ways. For example, Serum here is telling you that it is a 2-oscillator synth with an extra noise oscillator, sub-oscillator, that all can be routed into a filter or just go directly into this invisible mixer, which is a unity mixer, so your levels are on the modules themselves. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about frequencies a little bit and how to use a synthesizer in a way that breaks the suggested signal flow, I guess. If we break down Serum into basically a modular synth, there's a lot that's possible when you start to think of Serum as a synthesizer in a different way. Like, basically you have to unlearn everything you've seen, and then when you look at it as if you're the first person to ever discover the synth, assuming you know your way around synthesizers in general, you would be touching it and looking at the panel and reading it. In this case, we're going to do a very intentional sound design that I'm wondering how many of you are this intentional on sound designing. So ignore everything I have on the project back here. I was just making samples and testing various free plugins. Side note, one of my favorites that made it to the top of my list right away was this thing right here. That looks amazing. Anyway, off topic. I'll leave the scope up just for fun. The main thing I'm gonna talk about is frequency, right? So I'm gonna have to bring up another visualizer. It's essentially like a spectrogram, but a spiral. This is like one of the ultimate ways to view a spectrum, in my opinion, because it's in a musical context. So if we take a look here at the ugly wavetable I have selected, you can see where it has harmonics that are mostly related to F, and then its overtones, which you can see are closely related to other notes. If you look here when I sweep the wavetable, you can see all those little tiny harmonics appearing and disappearing. There will be points accidentally in this waveform where there is a stronger relationship for a certain harmonic. I'm going to use one of the default wavetables that come with Serum. If we listen to these various waveframes, we can hear a emphasis on certain harmonics. For example, let's look at this one right here. These, as you can see with your eyes, are about the same distance from each other, and what we're actually hearing is the 8th harmonic in relation to this frame. In this case, if I play the note, that isn't much different than if I were to isolate the 8th harmonic. So what's happening is, because both these type of events are present, your mind is actually going to hear both of them in the same kind of percentage that it is depicted visually. This left wavetable here has, like I said, an equal share of the 8th harmonic and the 1st harmonic, which is its main fundamental pitch. But if I were to put a bend mode and destroy that relationship, as I increase this, we're gonna get the 1st harmonic emphasized, because as you see visually, when I bend this waveform, nothing is repeating until the next wave cycle. The whole frame is the fundamental frequency. So the other thing that's gonna happen as we bend is not only are we gonna get a increase in dominance of the fundamental frequency, we're gonna get the chaos added by these different waveforms that are less related to each other. This harmonic exists. This little notch here is going to be maybe the 12th harmonic or something like that. The point is, this event is happening. It's just only happening one time per oscillation. So your mind isn't going to prioritize it. It's going to act more as a timbre. And that goes for every single thing happening here when I skew this waveform. As I bend it, notice that the fundamental is dominant now, and all of the higher information your brain is just perceiving as the brightness added to it, as if you like distorted it. We can find a point where the 8th harmonic in this wavetable will cancel the one in the left wavetable. Notice how when I move the phase out from this position, how the bumps will get increased. At this particular phase right here, they are in phase, versus here, they're more canceled. And this is the nature of sound. If I slowly change the phase, you get frequency beating. Now, one thing you could do to automate that is to simply detune it. So to take this topic further, I wanted to show you one of my special wavetables where I've created a chord with just a single wavetable. I'm going to play one note. And so we hear the chord, even though all we're hearing is the one wavetable oscillator. These subtle shapes in the waveform here are contributing to the overtones that would be found in a chord. This is how a chord would look. There's no best way to do any one thing. This is just like cooking or like any other thing. Let me demonstrate a DC offset problem. See how far below the 0 point we have this now? Now if we put a high pass filter, the downside of regular pulse width like this is, you hear how ugly that sounds? You get this buzzy hornet swarming kind of sound. But when you use symmetrical, now the harmonics are fixed in place, but it's still pulse width modulation that we recognize. Here we hear a chord, but once I skew it, we're gonna hear the fundamental. That's kind of trippy stuff, right? With this one wavetable, there's already many possibilities to do a strange patch. Why don't we just use another LFO to change the speed of the first LFO? If I wanted to, I could fine tune this and get it to not be microtonal and get it to be actually like notes or something. And now we also have this bend mode. You know what? I kind of like it. Let's move on with this. But I can also go into the practical stuff, a respace. See on the respace here, your waveform is changing its dynamic profile over time, which is especially visible when the scope is zoomed out this far. My idea I had was, how can I get the sound of a respace but not have this variety of dynamic range? I was playing a lot with the whole concept of constructive and destructive interference, which is just what we talked about earlier with the +1 is +2. That would be constructive interference, and then negative interference is like +1 plus -1 is 0, so total phase cancellation. Or you can have +2 plus -1 and then you get +1. It hasn't completely phase canceled into 0, but it has destructively interfered with each other or added together. You've lost data. When you use this waveform, it's going to create this illusion of width. This is where the deep diving has some particular cases of payoff. Now I just have that off of just one wavetable. If you want to see more random rant, it'll get much cooler in modular synthesis. I hope you liked it. Leave a comment and see you next time.